coming out. It's great that we can be together, and I know more people will show up as the day goes on, but we're thinking that the group will be smaller than 25, which is the limit for COVID rules. So feel free to make yourselves comfortable however your COVID consciousness allows. There's hand sanitizers around, mask, no mask, that's your personal choice. We're really happy today to have our friends Steph and Brooke from Sustainable Settings come. Unfortunately, we didn't feel like bringing a whole bunch of people in single cars over to Carbondale was a good idea. So they were gracious enough to carpool and come here and work with us today. If you have ever been to Carbondale, Sustainable Settings is a beautiful ranch just as the valley begins to open up after you come over the pass. And if it's okay with you guys, I really recommend a visit because it's such a beautiful model of biodynamic and trinium methods, as well as just really a beautiful, beautiful farm and ranch. So without further ado, we'll let Brooke and Steph introduce themselves, and thanks so much for coming.
I'm Stephanie Syson. I run with Brook Biodynamic Botanicals, so we grow wholesale medicinal herbs for apothecaries and product lines. I've been at the ranch growing for, this will be the 5th season or so. 5 seasons ago I started there just leasing a tiny plot of land to grow herbs for my own product line that I had at the time for many years called Dynamic Roots. We did teas and tinctures and salves and the whole gamut. And as I progressed and as that product line grew and we got in the place where we didn't have enough herbs to keep up with the demand of the product, and I had to start purchasing more herbs from other folks and not finding lots of other growers, bigger places like Mountain Reserves or Pacific Botanicals, which are great in their own right in certain ways, seeing that quality of herbs coming in versus the quality that we were growing at the ranch, it just wasn't even the same plant at the end of the day. And so I found that my biggest purpose and calling at that point was to let go of the product line and focus fully on cultivation and growing and talking to other growers and getting other farmers to grow more medicinal herbs as well. And so I've dove in on that project, as well as the Basalt Food Park. It has been going for about 5 years, which is a public park that we turned into an edible permaculture food forest and medicinal herb garden that anybody can harvest anything that they want anytime. And that's been working really well also. So lots of little activities. I run the Living Permaculture podcast with Jerome Osentowski from the Central Rocky Mountain Permaculture Institute on KDNK and on NPR podcasts. Lots of nerdy farming stuff, lots of herbal nerdism. And I like to say with Brooke, I like to grow green beans because I like to eat green beans. I like to grow medicinal herbs because I have to. I consume them and I sell them, but they cultivate me. And they're so wild and interesting to me that being with them satisfies a part of farming to a level that growing all the other things is wonderful and valuable to me. But the herbs, they're definitely they get me going in a different way. So I love it a lot. And we do maybe 3 acres out at the ranch of about 65 different medicinals, maybe 10 that we do larger scale.
And she gets orders for 100 pounds and says, I can only give you 10. The demand's huge for medicinals, domestically grown, medicinal, organic or better. So I would encourage you to grow some. I don't believe anything I say. I'm perfectly unqualified for what I do every day and master of nothing. So in 24 years ago, Rose and I started Sustainable Settings. After being in China, we were frightened by what we witnessed there. It's not China bashing, it's just that many people all want blue jeans, Jeeps, and toothbrushes. And So we did the math and we came home, we were artists, and we decided that the most important thing we could do is find a piece of land and heal it, and to begin to heal ourselves as part of that. So I guess we're healers. Our emphasis has been on soil and soil building and grass farming, and we understood that if we got that right, probably we'd have about 85 to 90% of it figured out. And so we focused on that, health in the soil, and kind of everything we do is kind of a duh. It's like, I got a great idea. Let's put our cows on pasture, let them eat their natural diet, get sunshine and starlight, and drink crystal clean mountain water, and fucking duh. Right? We have health. And so we started with that. And we went through a lot of the horizontal, I like to say, the permaculture and organic and rotational grazing and all these physical horizontal methodologies. And then we understood that there was more. And so we started to get into more biodynamics. We starting in 2013, Enzo Nastati came over. We started to he helped us expand our understanding of what we're capable of. By the way, the essential question at sustainable settings is, what are we capable of? We've been mostly unschooled, I think, to understand how incredible we are. We're amazing beings. And we can do a lot of things, and we're not taught that, and we're not taught how to do that. And so biodynamics was an opening to the vertical, so we did all this good stuff that made sense, and we started to see movement, but it really wasn't until 13, 14 when we started to implement the biodynamics and these other beyond techniques and methods and relationships, and building our relationships, that we started to really see the vitality of the ranch and the health in the animals and the health in the soil and the flavor and the healing that the food can actually bring, because it's not only just purely physical, it is etheric body, it's also soul and spirit. And our beings need to be fed nutrition on all those levels. So I am, I guess, predominantly motivated in life by flavor. I'm a total lush. And so that's what drives, what we're doing is purely selfish. But it does spill over into community food and health in the interim. But I'm really driven by that. And so that led to also other things. And so we started to, with Steph, doing this work 4 or 5 years ago. And we started to see the herb, and maybe you'll talk to this, but part of biodynamics thinking and beyond is that we're creating a whole farm organism. And Rudolf Steiner had done his work on the human body and healing. I would highly recommend that you all look at the introduction, just the introduction to anthroposophic medicine, I believe is the title, to look at healing the whole being, not just the physical, scientific, materialistic body, but the spirit, soul, and etheric part of us. And so the farmers came to him a little bit after that, and he did the ag lectures, which he basically took what he had learned and other things from all of his scholarly studies and his, what's it called? Clairvoyance. But he was also quite a scholar. And anyway, he laid the body down, the human form down on the land, and said, your land is an organism. Okay, and so the elements in it are organs, just like you've been studying. I'm imagining how to heal the different systems in the body or the different organ functions, right? So we look at our land in that way. And so we really have a lot of what we need to heal this. and we have a lot of what we need in our land to bring it back into harmony and balance. Copy? Okay. So what we're doing with the healing aspects is it's just stimulating this organism and that organism to ramp up and respond. And so things like homeopathic, homeodynamics, things like that are part of that. We really only need to trigger the response in this incredible thing that we're riding around in to bring back that vitality and, right? Make sense? Yeah. So recently, well, I guess Enzo gave a one-day deal on herbalism, which he's done 8 or 9 or more seminars. But one of them was, there was a request to actually see how to make medicine that is all those levels that will affect the whole being. And so it's a different process than, say, what you're more used to, the more physical, or I say Wiccan, or the old herbalism, which is ancient and credible and all that, but it's based on, I don't know how to word it, but it's based on a stronger physical relationship. Not that it doesn't have those other levels too. Anyway, so it took a couple years for me to finally go, why don't I try what was given to us in that seminar? And so we started to take, we grew hemp for the first time last year. And so we wanted to try this out to make a hemp essence. And I think the definition of what we call an essence might be different from a formal herbalism essence. I don't know.
It's similar, like flower essences. Are you guys familiar with those? So it's tiny amounts of something that almost chemically couldn't be detected any longer in the actual ending product. And so it's the vibrational essence of the plant in the water. And so that's been around, like Bach flower remedies have been around for a really long time. And I know you guys read a little bit about that as you were creating these. And then continue and took it another step.
And so, so first we would capture the essence of the plant in a hydrosol. We would, with stills, when it's fresh, right out of the field. Then it was the essence of that plant, so to speak, could be, we had time to actually work. It was preserve it enough in the hydrosol form. Y'all familiar with hydrosols? And so, I mean, these are stories because somebody that we know and has been with us for a long time, supporting us and helping us, said, my mom has got Parkinson's. I heard you grew hemp and it's biodynamic. And so he says, can you get me some tincture, which is this strong hempy tasting, cannabis tasting thing that people are used to. And I said, okay, well, we have the hemp, we have about 100 pounds of flour, and we're making different products. And so, yeah, I'll get you something. And so we made the stronger, so many milligram per CBD per whatever, oils that we made, salves in this way of the crock pot in the, I don't know all this, this, how you do the slow cook process anyway, so we did all that. And then, so I remembered, oh, well, there's that Enzo talk a couple of years ago. Why don't we gather? And so I called up Alicia and Karen and Mike came over, just 4 of us, And we created this sacred space. We went through this process. We called in sacred waters from other parts of the planet. This is all this woo-woo stuff. And, but we did this stuff and all this intentionality. And we made this product. We made this, what we called essence, right? So it's a hemp essence. and started giving it away, basically, right? We can't, we're not doctors, or we don't have degrees in herbalism or da-da-da-da-da, so we made this thing up, and we started giving it away. So our whole thing is based on testimonials. So we got it to Adam's mom, who had the Parkinson's and da-da-da, and I didn't give him this other classical stuff, which is what he thought he was going to get. And we brought this to the nurse. Toby had three nurses 24/7, right? Somebody was always with her. So she's 78 or so. And when you get Parkinson's, when you're older, it's slower to decline. If you get it younger, it's really fast. I'm getting nods. I don't know anything about it. I was raised a Christian Scientist, so I don't know anything about medicine. I've never had a shot in my life. That's not true. I've had 2 to get. But anyway, Toby, they started to use it, and the nurses, we sat down and they said, we're scientific, and I go, I'm not, and so. But they had 30 and 40 years experience, and I said, well, have you ever had any healing situations happen that were not, prescription drug, da 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 da? And they said, oh yeah, and they're not explainable, and blah blah. So we tried it. Anyway, 4 days later, they asked for another bottle of it, and I go up to deliver it. And she said, and the nurses like kind of yanked me into the house, and I said, "What's going on?" And they said, "This stuff's doing something." I said, "Okay." And they said, "We've been with Toby for 3 years. She got up this morning by herself. She showered, dressed, and walked out into the kitchen, and we had a lucid conversation, like actually answering what I was asking her, not just talking." And they said, that hasn't happened for 2 years. So anyway, so we just start passing it out, and people are trying it, and so it seems to be affecting not the younger folk. They like the stronger stuff. But this essence that was made in this other way is affecting seemingly older folks that are further out, and they're regaining quality of life. So I don't know. We just did it. We're trying it. We're getting it out there, and people are, we have some real. Now once we give it away for a little bit, they say, "Look, I got to pay for this," and so then we start to figure out how to do that. How do you charge for your stuff? So this is all led to this. We're farmers, ranchers, and we milk 12 to 15 A2 cows, and we graze. They're all natural or biodynamic and 100% grass-fed. We have CSA. We have now with stuff 3 acres of medicinals, and so we just keep kind of going like that. So, like I said, we don't know what we're doing, and we just keep moving. So.
And I think the vibrational quality of medicine is so important, not to just treat our physical bodies, but we do have physical bodies, so to treat those as well.
Right.
But that we have this vibrational, energetic aspect, and with this intention and setting of ceremony that you guys did with the essence, that in older herbalism, not necessarily as much in modern day herbal certification courses that are much more about chemicals and quantities and more of a lab type setting. The older herbalists, you would never treat someone with a plant that you didn't have your hands on. You were putting that intention and your own healing power with the medicine to the person that you're giving it to, and that was a very direct connection from plant through healer to patient. And so all the way through that process was this intention and this vibration and this energy, and the healer is the conduit between the live plant and the person that's consuming it. And that has largely been lost in our modern healing world. A lot of the students that come to the ranch who have their certifications or are in process have never seen these plants live, and they have only bought them in a bag of powder and put them in a product in a lab, which has value also, but there's something really missing in that. That's really only one level of healing. And so to be able to recultivate that relationship, be it through creating sacred space and intention and addressing these vibrational energetic levels of healing as you make your healing products, and or having a true relationship with the earth and the plant and working with it and delivering it to someone that you also have a relationship with and understanding of, I think is really important. And while using aspen bark instead of aspirin for pain relief is a great step and better for you, we can do much better than that, than to just take our modern medicine model and change it out for herbs instead of pharmaceuticals. That's good, but that's only one aspect of the power that living plants and relationship have and can have within us.
Keyword relationship. The land, the last 25 years has taught me a lot. And so being in direct contact with the life, all of the life, from soil microbial, all that, and to the spirit of the land, it's a secret.
Mm-hmm.
But tell everybody.
So I'd love, just because we don't have a great understanding of the group and who's here and what you guys are looking for, if there's anyone that's looking for anything in particular than just our experiences and storytelling or a way to direct the information or bring something forward from us, I'd love to open that up, just because we could talk about super detaily on how exactly we grow blue vervain and what the spacing is and how much harvest and all, how many years, all of those details, or anywhere in between that and anything else, relationships with businesses or community. Is there anything that's coming forward for anyone, or are you thinking about growing herbs commercially or having a product line, or do you do any of those things currently? Mm-hmm.
I threw out some seeds this spring and weeds just totally took over. The plants I hadn't planned on took over. And I'm gonna start cover cropping and no-tilling and stuff like that. And I'm just wondering, what is a good plant medium to grow the herbs in that's gonna protect them from invasives without inhibiting them.
Sure. And you're talking about just a variety of medicinal herbs in general? Mm-hmm. So medicinal herbs, especially if you're getting the ones that are really bred for their medicinal quality, so they're going to be more wild genetics. So they're not like a package of arugula that has been bred by humans for so long that it's like it all comes up on the same day, give or take, pretty reliably. So you start a flat of ashwagandha seeds, and like 2 will come up in a week, and then 5 will come up in like 2 weeks, and some might not come up for 2 months. And so they have that individuality that's still in them as a wild plant. So direct seeding a lot of medicinal herbs is going to be really challenging because they aren't going to germinate as quickly as some of the undesirable plants that are in that plot. So I really recommend starting a lot in flats so that you can take care of them a little bit longer before you put them out there. They are really strong. So in the herbal kind of healing community, you think of medicinal herbs, and a lot of herbalists like wild herbs. And the reason that they like them, they feel that they're stronger, and they mostly are, because they grow in the wild without perfectly composted soil, without perfectly timed irrigation, without weed-free beds. So they have to struggle to survive. And when they do that, they're producing all of these secondary metabolites, all of these compounds that help them survive in an environment. And that is usually the medicine that we're looking for them. We're borrowing and utilizing their adaptation and ability to survive in a place, and then we get to take that into ourselves. So it's kind of a catch-22. You wouldn't want to plant your medicinal herbs in a bed that you would put your tomatoes in. They would grow big, but they would probably grow weak. And so there's that balance. If you guys come out to the ranch, I'm constantly trying to figure out where that balance is as a commercial grower, because I want the strongest herbs possible, but I also want to have a business doing that. So I'm walking that line. But with that setting, I would definitely, especially if you want to go no-till, which is very challenging to do, is to start them in and get them a little bit bigger. But once you get, like your mugwort, once you get a mugwort big, the grasses, all of that can come in. They're not going to beat the mugwort. It's just giving that plant a little heads up, and then it'll be able to compete really well. And then it'll probably spread itself by seed, and you'll have mugwort all over the place. And they'll be gifting themselves to your whole yard and your neighbors probably as well. But giving them a little leg up, and that direct seeding is just really challenging with a lot of medicinal herbs if you don't have a really clean seed bed. Does that answer? You can come out and see too.
Yeah, it answers some of my questions.
Sure.
I do start some of it in flats, and some of them said you could direct seed in the spring. So the ones that said you could, I tried, but
Yeah, and you can, and if you had a really tilled, like seed-free bed, you definitely could. And they might be assuming more that that's the environment you're planting into.
yeah,
But if
it was well tilled, but
the weeds just came up too fast
yeah,
and choked them out.
it wasn't seed free, I guess. You know,
Yeah.
they were, even though it was tilled, there was still
Yeah.
stuff in there.
Then the other option, if you're direct seeding, because I direct seed like calendula and some things out, is just make sure to do them in rows that you mark instead of broadcasting. Because if you broadcast, then you're like, oh, like I can't pull anything because I'm not really sure what anything is yet. So if you do a nice straight line, then you can weed everything else around it while you're waiting for those to identify themselves. And then you can kind of hand pull the things that are not what you were desiring for that space. But I've done the broadcast, and then you're just like, I can't weed anything because I'm not really sure like what's where and how to do it. And then the weeds just grow so fast sometimes, a lot faster than a lot of our other plants that we're looking to grow.
Do you use mulches?
I do use mulches, and I came from more of a permaculture background, and so grew all the medicinal herbs, but more in like food forests and really polyculture, sheep mulching, that whole angle, which worked really well on a small scale and for a home scale. As that started to get into acres, sheep mulching an acre is like nearly impossible. If 100 of my friends want to come over with all of their pickup trucks full of cardboard and mulch and compost, then we could probably do an acre. But then you're going to have to come over again in like a year, and we're going to have to do that again. And so if you're small scale, mulching and sheep mulching, all of that works so well. If you're looking to go more commercial or a little bigger scale, that becomes challenging. So what I tend to do on a new bed, once my plants are up and growing, I'll give about 2 weeks where the soil's bare, which my permaculture brain is like, hey, bare soil. But then I can hoe, because if you have to hand pull everything, again, once you get to a certain size, it's really exhausting. And I'm an absolute will never, and you can all count on this, I will never ever wrap the soil in plastic. I know that a lot of people make that choice for economical reasons. It's really helpful from a weeding perspective. But there has got to be a better way, and I will not, if I cannot farm commercially without plastic, then I don't need to be farming, in my personal view. So I'll leave the soil bare for 2 weeks, wait for the weed seeds to germinate, I'll hoe them and get them down, then I'll mulch after that. So they'll flush up once after I've turned the soil and planted my seed, get rid of them once, wait 2 weeks, get rid of them again, then I mulch really heavy after that for the rest of the season. And that's usually enough.
What do you mulch with?
It tends to be whatever I have on hand, but I prefer leaves for annual beds and wood chips for perennial beds for a few reasons. Wood chips are harder to weed through, and they break down slower. They also encourage a fungally dominated soil, which is really great for perennials and hardwood perennials. But for annuals, and this is vegetables as well, They tend to prefer a bacterially dominated soil, and so leaves help to produce that.
So leaves for the annuals, and what do you use for the perennials?
Wood chips.
Wood chips.
And leaves are also, they compost faster, so when you're soil again next year, the wood chips aren't like kind of all in the way, and you can move the leaves back, or they've probably all digested and made new soil by that time.
I was just wondering, now that you're 5 years into it, and you said you have about 65 different things, at what year is your profit year, and how much do you need to start producing to actually be a viable commercial? I mean, was it year 2 at 2 acres, or is it really just now at the 5-year with your 65, and 3 acres?
When we probably only do 10, like actually commercially. So I'm a bit of a plant collector, or they collect me, I'm not sure. But so I'll have like 2 or 3 of these plants that will never work commercially. Like the value isn't high enough, or they're too difficult, or they don't produce enough yield, or what have you. So for those 10, you could make money in year 1 off of annual herbs, off of oats, calendula, tulsi. They're in super high demand. They're annuals. They'll produce really, really quickly. As Brooke said, I don't sit on a single pound of herb at the end of the season. It goes out as fast as I can harvest it. And so we didn't want to take on no debt, no loans. We do have the value of the partnership where we have the land and the water and those resources, which is huge. But there's bottlenecks as we grew. So the bottleneck that we had previously was dehydration. I was dehydrating in a 40 by 14 hoop house with 90% shade cloth and vapor barrier on the ground and hanging racks, and that worked really well for a period of time. But if it rained, nothing would dry. Once it started getting cold at night, nothing really dries. So the shoulder seasons were out, rainy times were out, and everything just would slow down. But now, so dehydration was that bottleneck. Now we are building a either 20 or 40, we're trying to decide, shipping container, solar-powered dehydrator with fans and heaters and a huge solar array. And so that will be huge into being able to dehydrate more of our crops. Also because we didn't go all annual, so a lot of the perennials are going to take 2 to 3 years to come to harvest. So it really depends on how quickly you need to see that income and what division of annuals to perennials. And if you can plan out enough annuals in year 1 with the space to dry them to carry you over while you wait for the perennials to start to come in, you could make money right away. It just depends on how you structure it. This is an amazing book. It's like really the only technical manual on growing medicinal herbs that exists. Because it's really there's a lot of like how to grow herbs books, but with details of like, and this is a different climate with much more rain, so it's going to be a different yield than what we're going to see out here. But the only one who's put numbers to these kinds of things at all, if you haven't.
Farm implements, everything.
I mean, everything, the dehydrator, the whole deal. So now after the dehydrator, what will be my bottleneck is going to be processing. So instead of other, veggie crops, you can just sell fresh, which is good and bad. Our crops are going to be storable, so we don't have to sell them right when they come in, but we do have to dry them and we do have to crush them. And so we're working on everything right now is hand crushed. And so there are $10,000 machines that crush, but in between here and there, we're working out some other ways to optimize our processing of the material. And really finding those buyers who, you guys, if you're out here in Paonia, have a great resource through the Grow Network, and Marjorie Wildcraft is a business partner of mine in a couple different projects, and she is game to help all the growers in Paonia who want to grow at scale be moving into one of the bigger medicinal herb growing regions. She would love to see that happen. You have to be somewhat larger to be able to hit the price points that she's looking for, but they are reasonable on the market but without machines or without a little scale, you're probably not going to hit them as a home grower. But they're beautiful, beautiful things to grow, and there's a lot of demand, a ton of demand. Every apothecary that I work with, and I only work with 3 because I can't, every year I grow more and they want more, and I can't barely even keep up with them, much less try to need to find another apothecary to sell to. And so I sell within, Front Range is the farthest that I sell, and I'm completely sold out all the time. And they want way more than I can give them every year. So there's room in this market for all of us. We could all have 3 to 5 acre medicinal herb farms and still probably not have to go outside of Colorado to sell our herbs. So that's fun.
Anybody else?
I have a question about the fresh market. Is there one? And because I'm just really not interested in drying them down,
Yeah.
and doing all that. Not, I mean, some of them yes, but most of them no.
Right.
So is there a fresh market, and how do you
It
access
is.
that?
It is, but it's smaller. If we were closer to the Front Range, there would be, obviously there's more people and a larger market for it. I have played with the shipping stuff, which just gives me endless nightmares the whole time it's in the mail. And we'll overnight it with ice packs, but one thing happens wrong in the shipping delay, and you have herbs beautiful, amazing herbs rotting in the mail, which makes me want to break out in hives a little bit. So I do 2 deliveries to the Front Range per year, and I'll come up with coolers and ice packs and do that. If I spent more time cultivating that, there would be, and I sell locally to small herbalists that have either for their own private family use or they're small herb companies. And most of them come to the farm and harvest, which I really, really love. They harvest the herbs themselves, which adds that layer of connection with them and the plants, which I think is really valuable. It's just we're in more of a rural area, so how many herbalists are near enough by? Probably not enough without the Front Range to make a viable fresh herb business, unless you really dial in the shipping, or you have a farmer here that goes to a market in Denver and you're able to create some kind of relationship where they can deliver those herbs out fresh with their fresh produce. I think it's possible with a little more extended reach, but it's going to take some creative design. I think the other avenue that I would like to explore when there are more growers around is more of a Colorado cooperative of growers. Because as a product line, if I want to do something with comfrey, and I have a FDA compliant product line, and I want to buy your comfrey and your comfrey and your comfrey, 5 pounds from you and you and you, and I want to support all these small farmers, that's really lovely. But from an FDA perspective, then I'm liable to, if they audit me, to have to genetically test yours and yours and yours. So that's $300, $300, which doesn't end up working out, which is why these product lines are kind of in a pinch where they really need to buy a lot from one person. But it doesn't really mean one person, it means one entity. So if we have a Colorado co-op, we buy your comfrey and your comfrey and your comfrey, mix it all together, that's one lot of comfrey. So that buyer, no matter if it's 50 tons or 1 pound, they have to test the lot. And so we can serve larger groups. And so that goes for fresh as well. If leaf people or a bigger local product line wanted to make a fresh product, it would be challenging for them to buy in small quantities from people. And so it would be easier for them to collectively buy from us. And we'd be able to serve a bigger buyer that would probably come down here with a refrigerated truck and get it all that way.
I have a question about pest control. So pests can also, they're part of the environment too. And it's just if we have something that we want to do something for ourselves with, and then the pest is a pest instead of just an inhabitant. So what do you do to keep your harvest for you and your purposes versus having it go to pests?
Sure, and Brooke can probably speak to a lot of other vegetables, which I can as well. But for herbs, medicinal herbs are the plants that we recommend vegetable growers to grow to limit pests in their garden. I don't have any pest problems at all, ever. The only thing that comes to my garden, and this is the way I choose to look at it, which works for me, is the nettle bagworm, or the nettle caterpillar, they call it. Once you have an appreciable amount of stinging nettle, these lovely caterpillars, which are the red admiral butterfly, will find your patch, and they will come. For mine, they come once a year at a predictable time in spring. They'll be like 2, and then they'll be like 40, and then they'll be like 4,000. And they'll be like, the whole patch is just this writhing. It's really quite beautiful. But I've already gotten a cutting by that time. They will come, they will get their cutting. Then they will fly away like beautiful butterflies. And I will still get like 2 more cuttings off that patch. So I do nothing. I give it to them. It's their turn. They need the nettle as much or more than I do. It's only fair. And then they kind of do the deal. They take what they want. They fly away. The patches come back stronger when the caterpillar eats them as to when I pick them. So they're doing something else. They're fertilizing. They're pooping all over these plants. So they're fertilizing the whole thing, and then it flushes right back. And I know other growers that are out there like, I hate these caterpillars, and they're pinching them and like doing the whole deal. And they stay a really long time in their garden, and they come on other plants. They're so well behaved in my garden. They stay right there on the nettle. They don't touch a single other thing. They do their deal. They fly away. I see them next year. And we have a very symbiotic relationship. And that works for my site and with me. And there's just nothing else. We don't have aphids. We don't have whiteflies. But we have every pollinator on the planet. Weird, wacky pollinators I've never seen anywhere else. And they're just writhing and kind of all over. The bees are prolific to a level that it's almost hard to harvest sometimes because you're like, oh my God, there's so many bees. And I used to only want to harvest the motherwort in the really early morning before the bees got out because I didn't want to disturb them. But now we have so many beautiful pollinating plants and nectar plants that I just kind of like, okay, off you go. And we just move on. They just move on down, and they don't sting me or anything. And we just have that. I'm still trying to work on that relationship with the grass. I'm like, grass, there's like 90 acres of pasture. I love you. Please go over there where the cows want to eat you and where you can be free and I won't pull you out. It's not listening as well yet, but we're working on that relationship.
So, good example of there are no pests and there are no weeds. They're indicator species. And they're there doing a job, and they're there to tell you something. They're messengers. So we don't kill the messengers. We listen to them. We look into their life cycles. We look into what they're bioaccumulating. We look into, right? And we understand what their job is. And I have stories like this too with different insects that, like aphids on my Brussels sprouts, but not on any of the other brassica, the cauliflower and the cabbage and broccoli. And so first year I thought, okay, it's a trap plant in my mind. We'll just let them, we're getting great broccoli and amazing cauliflower, incredible cabbage, so, right? So let them have so the next year plant the Brussels again and just write it off. We don't get Brussels sprouts. Well, by the 3rd year, I'm learning what they're saying. And usually that when there's an insect infestation, we have thrown something out of balance. Or when there's a weed, it's coming in to heal the earth. We've scored it, we've plowed, we've built a road, whatever. And so these are they're pioneer species, and they're going in to heal. And so with that kind of thinking, it's not a symptomatic pill popping response, go buy a poison and kill something. It's a systemic response to understand in time and space what is going on with the relationships of those organisms. And so our instant gratification mentality says take a pill or kill, And instead, if we sit back and we watch and we see the cycle, we go, oh, let the worm have the nettle, and then we'll have plenty later. And so the Brussels settled out, and the problem isn't usually right there either, what they're telling us. It's usually somewhere else in the system. And so we have to understand all the relationships. And by shifting a relationship of plant buddies, there's companion planting, there's all these other things, or bringing animals into the system, or getting our thinking straight can be a big one. If we hate something, it's gonna, I'm gonna get sick, I'm gonna get sick, I'm gonna get sick, well, you're probably gonna get sick. And so there's a little bit of that too. I don't know how much time we have, but
Another hour and 10 minutes.
at some point I'd like to just go address potency and sourcing. Because, can I just do it?
Go.
Okay. Well, we're healers, right? And so we want to make good therapies. Call them what you want. And part of the reason that there's such high demand for domestic, organic, or better medicinal herbs is that a lot of stuff that you can buy is coming outside of the country. It's not being monitored necessarily about quality of the cultivation or the soil quality and the depth of what's helping form. Yes, it's going to look like elecampane, but what is it coming out of? What kind of soil is it coming? What kind of organism, farm organism, is it coming out of? And that affects the potency and the vitality. Does this make sense? And so there's qualitative difference in where things come from and how they're grown, intentionality, all the way to good soil, physical soil structure. And so if we want to make, so the demand in the market is really directly related to the quality, I think. And so you can get the Egyptian, Indian, and or Chinese, whatever, chamomile, and if you grow it with your love and intention and in good organic or biodynamic or better intentions and method, we have some stories about potencies that have come from, herbal potencies that have come from the ranch and from that organism. And not to diminish Stephanie's intention and everything else, but there is a foundation there that has, you should tell a story.
Sure.
About that. So the first year, why don't you tell one of them?
Okay. So the first year when we were just leasing, and I had been growing our calendula for the product line for an infused oil that went into a cream, like a body cream. And so it was still calendula we grew, but we grew it in various gardens. Then the first year we had it all from the ranch. We were doing, before the ranch's calendula, we were doing a ratio of 4 to 1, 4 parts oil to 1 part calendula flower for the infusion of the oil, and then that oil would be half and half with the waters to make the cream. And it made this very nice, lovely cream that we had either a lavender or a ylang ylang essential oil, so it smelled very lovely. And so then we had all 100% flowers from the ranch, and we just did the same ratio. And the oil was so orange and smelled so much like calendula. We were like, well, that's good. We love strong stuff, so we'll do it. And then the cream was orange. And there was no amount of ylang ylang we could put in there that would not make it smell like calendula, which some of our really diehard herbal clients were like, that's awesome. But others are like it's orange cream, and I want it to smell like ylang ylang. And so we ended up cutting back our ratio to get the same quality that we had been offering 12 to 1 flour or oil to flour. So we were able to use a ton less flour because it was so much stronger coming from this place with, at that time, 20 years of intention and soil work and water and air and all of those things that had accumulated in that space. So in addition to the grower and the relationship and the product maker, it's that relationship with the land and the accumulated healing that had already occurred in that space. And we saw that again and again. And with buyers, even me as a beginning farm at that time, all I had to do, and I'm working with an educated consumer base because these are people who own apothecaries, was send them a couple samples and they're like, oh, we'll take everything you have, even though it's 25% more expensive than what they can get it from Mountain Reserves at, which technically is the same plant. But they know it, they smell it, they look at it. I'll pass this around, and if you've ever opened up like a tea bag of peppermint tea or something like that, it's brown. It smells, strong like menthol because menthol lasts. But from the growing through the drying, like if your plant doesn't look really close to the same color as the living plant, then something has gone wrong. Like you want to retain all of that quality. So all of that quality that we have, we could destroy in the dry shed in a second. But there's accumulation building and a higher potency of everything that comes off this property than anyone that I've shown it to has seen anywhere else. And so they want it and they know the difference of that versus the crushed up brown peppermint in some bag from somewhere. You're welcome to open and smell. And it's one story. One more.
Good. No, that I wanted to just talk because you're sourcing materials. I don't know what you're all doing, but you're maybe not growing all your own. You're getting it from people you know, or off the shelf, or you're ordering it in to make your various things. And so it's really important about where it's from and how it can be mint, but it can be mint. You know what I mean? Right, whatever it is. And so, what do you want? And what can you also do?
And this is 1.5 years old, this mint.
What
so
is
this
that?
is not this is
that
not
mint?
freshly harvested. This is last early spring's harvest.
What is that?
Spearmint.
Like the Tulsi and the
Got a little of last
clary
year's Tulsi
sage
too.
are off
Crush it
the
up.
charts. They're just crazy.
I think your mic kind of turned and is,
Down.
yeah. Or it's like I can hear a oscillation against the,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it's okay, but I thought I'd try and kind of
Is that better?
perfect.
Okay. Anyway, so sourcing and potency. And there is the physical aspects and the horizontal aspects of the farming, and there is this. We are amazing tools. And when we're working on I know they're not medicines. What do you call them? Therapies, treatments, medicines, whatever. Your lab work and your state of mind and the kind of space you create is very important in channeling the potency into the work, into the medicine, or into the concoctions, and into your clients or patients, whatever you call them. Relationship.
Well, and that's even on the farm when you go out. Tilling is not the evil
That's right.
thing that has been made out to be. It can be absolutely misused and destroy soil quality, but it's a tool for, when used properly, that can be really, really valuable in lots of ways. But having that intention there too, not just going out onto the earth and just doing what you want with it, but coming out to that space, asking permission, letting the earth know, hey, we're about to come out here and turn this soil, and it's going to be a big machine and it's going to be intense, but open up and this is for the good and we're going to add all of these plants and we're going to heal all these people and we're going to add them to heal you, and creating the relationship all the way through and respecting the process all the way through, that these are if we have to have I had a client of mine was telling me about a shoulder surgery that he just recovered so quickly. The doctor's like, what did you do to recover so quickly? And he's like, well, I don't know if you really want me to tell you because it's a little like woo-woo. He's like, no, tell me. He's like, well, I told my shoulder, like, we're going to do this. We're coming in here. We're going to put a pin in here. It's going to feel like trauma. It's going to feel like you're being hurt. But it's for the good of us and our body. So relax, open up, trust in the process, and we're going to make this all better. I've misused you. I'm doing my best to fix it up now. So here's where a pin's going to go. Here's where a pin, and he would press on the spots to allow that conversation to happen with his body. And his doctor's like, yeah, I'm not telling anyone that.
But it worked.
But it worked. And so also with the land, you're coming to do something to the soil that is big and extreme with a big tiller, if that's the route that you're going, or even a little tiller, to have that dialogue that you understand what you're doing and you're asking permission to change over this space to something new with this certain tool, I think is really important to the process.
You tell all the life in the soil, look, we're going to come in and do this, go down or over, and we'll come in about a half an hour, and then we're going to go do this. And then you go, and you first go out there and start digging, and there's worms, and you're going, oh my God, I'm going to kill all this life and disturb the fungal network and but you let them know, and you go out there and do it, and there's no worms. Where'd they go? Don't believe anything I say, try it. You brought up something. I lost it. But it's about that acknowledging the life, asking the life, and thanking that. We are working in the realm of the living, as Steiner would say, and others, and we're in relationship. And so, yes, I talk to my soil. Yes, I talk to my plants. Yes, I talk to my cows. Everything is alive. We're living in a dynamic. Get on board.
I like your
Jump
story.
in. It's fantastic.
Your story, Brooke, of when you first started biodynamics and how you're like supposed to like spray these things out, and you're like,
Yeah.
I hope my neighbors
Yeah.
don't see me like going out to
Somebody
whip
says,
these little magical potions everywhere.
Somebody says, here, take this handful of cow shit, spin in a horn over the winter, and it's transformed and, whatever, cosmic, and put it in 3 gallons or 4 gallons of water and stir it for an hour and think about all these wonderful people that are going to eat your food and all these things. And yeah. I'm a Western guy, it's like, okay, sure. So I wait till dark, make sure no one's out watching. Then you see what happens, and you know what? It's not about belief. It either works or it doesn't work. But it's a little off from what we're taught, and that's the biggest hurdle, is that. And just try it before you write it off. There's energetics. There's all kinds of stuff, and we are conduits. And we're fantastic conduits of light and force. And it just works. Might sound weird, but chefs are clamoring for our stuff. They say our flavor is untouchable, of all the local farms. Barclay Dodge up in Aspen, in his Bosque restaurant, he says, I got your cauliflower last week, and I started to do my cauliflower thing as a chef. He has his, what he does with cauliflower, and it backed me right out of the kitchen. It said, whoa. Made me do something. I couldn't do it just didn't work. and I had to find another way to be with this cauliflower, and I produced a very different thing. And, so there's that. There's so the vitality, the quality. Steph first sent out that first fall, little packets to these apothecaries, and not only to see if they were interested. Well, of course, she already said they ordered, but now they're reporting back, at least some of them have, that biodynamic botanicals first of that herb, right? Mana Foods is a little grocer, our place. She just says, "Oh my God, bring in anything from sustainable settings." It's what people buy for. They'll buy it first. Well, are we a local farm? Yes, but maybe there's more to it than that. So it's flavor and potency and vitality
And love.
and a little bit of that.
Your question?
So I have so many questions. I just want to go back to, I guess, the foundation, the soil. What about that? What about making it do magic? How do you really begin to do that process?
You mean to build your relationship with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to build it.
I think have this like a fourth of an acre in town and trying to do all these things. I'm not a gardener. I've never been. I'm reading a lot. There's a lot of trial and error going on. A lot of observation happening. But the soil has to be taken. There has to be a closer look taken at that and doing that transformation from the bottom up in the majority of the area.
Well, I mean, there's your attitude and which is already there, and it knows it. So your relationship's already started. If you're asking this question, the life knows it, and so are you a new owner there?
We've been there for about 2 years.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of the perimeter of the house, it was a construction zone, and
Yeah.
buffalo grass grew across the whole thing, all of its entirety. And now, there's a lot of plants going on. We did start off with massive sheet mulching.
Other things have come in since the buffalo grass?
Oh, yeah.
So the buffalo grass did what their job was, is to hold the soil and to start things.
Yeah.
And this is what we have to remember. These take time. We acquired the ranch in 2003, and it probably wasn't until 2006 that we started playing around with the vertical with some biodynamic preparations, and then it wasn't really till 11 or 12 that we'd have Lloyd move to the valley, and we started doing big sprays and more applications of these things. Our intention, of course, is improving our relationships, getting better. So I think it takes some time, but it's already happening, I can tell.
Yeah.
And but there are ways to increase that, and you don't have to be the alchemical wizard that creates the preparations or the whatever. You can use them that are made by someone else, and they're loaded with intention, and you're adding your intention to those things. That's to me, as a portal, at the beginning, and then there's lots more that happens after that. But and there's just good, sound, physical stuff to do too, and you get an indication that, well, maybe I should put ground basalt in there, or something like that. And I am, as much as I'm done with the physical, like totally. I think you have to have it to move it, and we can move it, but I think it has to be there. So if your soils are coming back shy of zinc or boron or something, a little homeopathic touch of that might be a good idea to put in your stir and your application. You know what I mean? Or it's very complex.
So I can give you a few
But
from the more, and I'm not done with the physical, because I feel like if I was done with the physical, I would no longer be in a physical form. And so I feel
Close.
very connected to both the energetic and the spiritual world as well as the physical. And certainly coming from a permaculture background and from a health background, sometimes a system is so out of balance that it's just refining the spiritual energetic part is not enough. If someone is completely out of health, we do have to address the physical form. If a soil is completely degraded and out of balance, adding the spiritual and the intention and the homeopathic things is really important to start bringing those energies forward. But we also have to physically heal the physical damage that was done to this space. And you said you've already sheet mulched, which is a great start if you had good layers and ingredients, and you have water for the site. Have you done like compost tea sprays, bacterial inoculations? So to add the like mass, the carbon, the nitrogen, all that is part of it, but the life needs to help get that engine going to start digesting these things. So I would find the best compost that you can possibly find. We have great compost at the ranch, or another place that you feel when you're there at that farmer ranch that like this is vibrant and alive and the soil is what you're looking for. Get some of that compost, make a compost tea out of it. So you're basically creating like a probiotic for your soil when you make a compost tea. And then you're inoculating that all over your soil. So that gets the biological life charged up. And then I almost always recommend for new or degraded landscapes to bring in fungal inoculations as well. So Fungi Perfecti has a great like garden inoculation that's tons of different mycelial strains. So you want to bring all the players to the table, and then they're going to sort out like which ones need to be there and which ones are going to dominate. But assuming if it was a scraped site, they took away all the life from that place. So now you need to bring it back. And once you moisten it, you have the nitrogen, you have the carbon in the system, you bring the bacteria, you bring the fungi, you bring the spirit and the energy and the intention, and then all of that creates the symphony that it knows what to do. Your land knows what to do. We just have to put the pieces there so that they can choose how to make that work. As well as, depending on what you want to do and how fast you want to do it, there are great like cover crop seed blends, and I like some more diverse ones than the regular cover crop. There's a great one called the Good Bug Blend from groworganic.com, is a great company, and it has probably 25 different medicinal herbs is what most of them are, vegetables and medicinal herbs, annual, biennial, and perennial. And it's a super diverse blend, and some of them will take great and some of them in your system will thrive and others won't. But that's for your land to kind of decide what it needs if you just give it. So you give it plant species, bacterial species, fungal species, all the materials that they need to eat, and all of it will just start singing together.
so I'm of the opinion that most of what you need is already there. Now we have ruined places, and we have destroyed them, like Steph said, and we need to bring back certain things.
It
But
depends on how long you want to wait.
yeah, I think all we need to heal this is here. Most of what we need. It needs to be stimulated and orchestrated or conducted. We're conductors in an orchestra, in our laboratories, in our bodies, in our healing, and in our land work, and our relationships with the land. And so much of what we need is already present, but it's locked up and not available. That's true here, it's true here. And so how do we unlock the life? So working with the life, and if you say, bring in, you can go buy a product that has, from Japan, that's, what's it called? Effective microorganisms, but that's for Japan. Or you can go out, and it may survive, some of them will survive the first season and the others won't. And so you're bringing in something beneficial, or you can go out and harvest with rice, cooked rice, the beneficial microbes and fungi in your climate and in your environment, and then breed them in bigger vats of rice and stir them up and make brews and apply them. You can get the raw milk down the road and do a milk and honey spray, or a milk and honeycomb spray, and bring in different impulses. Yeah.
Will you give a little more detail on that rice that you're talking about?
This is
The Korean method of farming?
yeah. I can send you a printout or a handout, and it's I forget the names of the guys.
No, it's just the Korean method of farming.
Yeah, we've been using it for years, and it's come back up in the permaculture scene as a real viable thing, and but it's you basically, and you can use Uncle Ben's perverted rice if you want, and put it out in a cup, like a Tupperware container, and bury it down to grade. I know this thing is not doing its job here. And just sink it dig it down in just so that it's there, surface. Prop the lid just ajar a little bit. Maybe put a piece of hardware cloth, like rabbit cage type fence, right, over the top so vermin don't get in it. Cover it with duff, just the grasses and bark or whatever. And do that in a forest or in a woodland environment, and do it in a riparian environment. And you will collect different microbes and fungi, okay? Then, so wait 4 or 5 days, 6 days, check it. The white rice will turn into the carbohydrate, right? Will attract all that, and you'll get yellows and greens and purples and all kinds of stuff. And then that's your inoculant. Then you get a little larger tub, cook up some more rice. You take that, and that breeds, and then you start using that to make teas and other things. There is always the anaerobic and aerobic cycles, and so you need to be concerned with that. You could take that and put it into a bubbler, like a compost tea bubbler. And the one thing is that there's green and brown, right? So the forest is going to have more of a fungal collection. And the riparian's going to have more of the microbial, more so. And so when you do your teas, we found out that if we put them both together and we bubbled it overnight, that we lost the fungal, the microbial took over. And so we would always stir. Is this too complex? Is this okay? No. So we would do the microbial one that came from more of the riparian environment by a ditch or something, right? And then we do that and add some molasses, or breed it out and encourage it. And then we would take right before spraying, we would take the one gathered in the forest or under the trees and just stir that in a little, and then use it, strain it and use it. And we got more benefit. Okay. So anyway, this is harvesting your indigenous microbes and fungi.
You could definitely, if you have a neighbor or a ranch near you that has a environment that you think is thriving and looks like what you want to create in your place, you can borrow or take some of their fungal and bacterial life and bring it to your site, especially if it's nearby, or if they're with mimicking nature, if there's a certain type of plant that you really want to grow, where does it grow wild? How is it happiest there? If you want to grow that plant, trying to mimic as close as possible the bacterial, fungal, and water and solar environment that it thrives in naturally without humans is the way to get it to thrive where you are, if we can just get it as close to that as possible in our system.
But I'll say it again, much of what we need is already here, and we need to just free this up, and ask and acknowledge and thank. It's a big part of it. It's, for me, it's 50% of fertility, flavor, and vitality is the vertical.
And listening too. Sometimes you want something to grow,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that it wants to be where you are or is the right thing for you or your situation. There's an intelligence there that speaks to, and if you're just constantly beating your head trying to get this one thing to happen at your site, it just might not be the right thing. But there are a million things we can grow, and worlds we can create. Not every place is designed to be a permaculture food forest like Jerome's up at the Permaculture Institute in Basalt. But lots of places can be, but some places should never be that. So listening to what this environment that you live in wants to be and respecting that information as well, instead of our will, that we are just going to do the thing and we're going to make whatever we want, wherever we want, no matter what it takes to get there.
Yeah, Wendell Berry says, you know, what will this land allow me to do? Not what do I want to do with this land. So it's a big difference.
I have a question about what crops you would recommend for if there were a co-op. What would be the most beneficial crops to grow for, I guess, buyers or consumers? And do you do any kind of potency testing? And do you have any top recommendations for like submitting our own tests?
Sure.
For like oil and whatever.
Right. So far, we've talked about doing chemical tests, and I've been to a lot of the labs that do it, but we haven't needed to go that route. The olfactory testing and the testing that we have inherently in us as human beings, and because I don't work with direct to consumer, which a lot of times when we have the product line, people are buying things based on like bottle color and font style and all of these things that I just found was exhausting to spend my time on. When working with a wholesale buyer, people who are making products, people who run apothecaries, herbalists, they really know what they're looking at, and they taste it and they smell it and they look at it and they know the difference in the potency when they work with it. So we haven't, there is a great lab out in California, Alchemist Solutions, and they're kind of the lab for the medical or the medicinal trade. The American Herbalist Guilds and all of those. They're an amazing lab, and they do chromatography, and you can get any test you want to get. So they would be the ones I would go to if and when we decide that we want to do that. Some of the most in-demand crops, nettle is huge. I could grow a cajillion tons of nettle and never have a problem selling it at a decent price. Comfrey is super valuable, calendula is super valuable, Tulsi's in high demand. We have really high demand for dandelion leaf, dandelion root, for burdock root, for clover. So oats, a lot of our nutritional herbs are really in high demand. And then what's another thing? I could never sell enough or grow enough marshmallow root. There's quite a few that we can grow here that are in extremely high demand. And if anyone's intrigued about the co-op idea, and they want to reach out and they feel like they could put at least 1/8 of an acre into a crop, please reach out. And that's been like a desire of mine for many years. I don't have the energy or time to create the whole thing on my own, but if some partners who are really interested in that concept wanted to come forward and help move that idea along, I would certainly be open and reach out and do that. But there's a lot.
So you brought up measurement, lab work, scientific, this or that. How we measure is really important. So when we first got started, we sent off to the organic recommended Kinsey soil lab in Missouri to get a soil test. Well, the soil test was based on the chemical elements in the soil. Now, who do you think devised that soil test?
The people who sell.
The people who sell chemicals to put on your land, right? So science is quite guilty of finding what it's looking for, right? So how do we measure? We measure by, you can do that kind of test. There's the newer Haney PLFA test that's being done that measures the life in the soil. So here's a USDA guy that, actually USDA scientist, soil scientist, that finally kind of stuck his head up above the crowd and said, you know, we're measuring the soil in the wrong way. Duh. We're measuring the chemical elements in it. We're not measuring, soil's alive, and so we need to figure out how to measure the life in the soil. And so he's figured out how to measure how the protozoa, microbes, fungi, and all the different life forms respirate. Follow? And so with a baseline in 2014, we got that, and we had, you know, one of 50 farms and ranches in the study, and we got a baseline. Then in 15, we started to track how the various life forms in the soil were doing, and we could judge our stewardship on that. It's making sense. So our decision making was based on, are we, encouraging the life in the soil or diminishing its viability? And so that's another way to measure. Dowsing and gut and there are other ways for you to measure and create your own gauges. I dowse my soil test. I dowse a lot of things, so that's a whole nother, it's your personal gauge, but you can use copper rods or pendulums, or use your body and figure out your sense of things. And you can begin to measure things that a lab will never pick up on. The etheric, the soul, the spirit of your place or your crop or the vitality that we need. And so how do we measure is a very interesting subject, and what kind of criteria we use. And then I have the chefs going off the charts with the flavor. They are my soil test. Their palates are trained. They're flavor hunters, right? And when they taste something, when they taste an egg from our place or a cauliflower or and the herbalist will, so that's another form of data, right? So what do we, this hemp essence, I'm not making any claims. I'm just giving it away, and people are coming back with testimonies. There's another way to measure. Does it work? So we have to be careful with the system that is asking us to measure in a particular way, and is it really encouraging us to steward the best we can and or be in the best relationship with the life that we can. It may encourage us to go buy something instead of just tickle something to come up that's already there, that just isn't available, it's not turned on. And the life can turn it on. There's available nitrogen and unavailable nitrogen. There's available carbon and there's unavailable carbon. And it's the life, and I mean all of the life from cosmic to earthly, that turns that on. Two spaces. Copy?
Copy. Is there a blueprint to the land as an organism that is laid out, or is there more detail around that? Like, is the water, the liver? I mean, is there like specific?
Yeah.
That?
Well, yeah, and then it's probably debated amongst those that do it. But the thing about this is it's not a bag of tricks, and we fall into that problem, and we want to find the techniques instead of being in relationship and being responsive. And so it goes against how we've been schooled. We've been schooled that, trick, and you fill your quiver, with these arrows, and instead of having a relationship and a responsive exchange. And so I'm a little, when we teach, we're kind of flirting with that edge of, yeah, here's some ways to work, but pay attention to what's going on. You know what I mean, have you ever been in love? Huh? You know how powerful that is between two people, right? You felt that before? Like you can communicate across distance, right? You know, you can feel each other. It's powerful. When we direct that to the life that we're collaborating with, we're co-creating with, that's the kind of tool I can talk about all day long, because you have to be in a dialogue and in response. So you want a drawing of the land like a body? We could come up with that. The soil is what? The lungs. The earth inhales and exhales every day. And the biodynamic treatments are based on when to apply them in that rhythm of breathing. Okay? So we put the mother, the nutrient, the cow horn, the horn manure nutrient in the afternoon when the earth is inhaling. And in the morning when the earth is exhaling is when we apply the silica and the astral and the cosmic preparation. So we're using those rhythms. We didn't even get into rhythms. When you work is important. Rose makes yogurt. Okay, and sometimes it's really thick and like we like it, creamy and thick, and sometimes it's watery and doesn't set. Experience, yes? So I said, when are you making it? She goes, what do you mean? I'm making it when I can make it. I go, okay, well, I get that too, but let's start paying attention. So the next time it goes off watery, it's a root time, or it's a leaf time. It's water or earth. What's happening in yogurt? What's happening in yogurt? It's a bloom, isn't it? Right? It's a bloom of life. And so if you make your yogurt on a fruit or a flower time, don't believe anything I say. Try it. So when we do things, when we plant, when we address the life, Lloyd Nelson, you know Lloyd, right? Okay, he's a biodynamic guy, and he makes preps, and anyway, he's a farmer, kind of. He's really more of a wizard, but anyway, he grows hemp and he grows smokable other things. And when he does everything for cannabis, he does it on a flower time, right? So he'll inoculate the seed or seed bathe his seed on a flower day. He'll plant on a flower day. He'll cultivate on a flower day. He'll harvest on a flower day. What do you want? You want the bud. You want the flower. Right? So you think that's the kind of stuff that's going into the powerful plant medicine. That kind of intention and harvesting those rhythms, those planetary rhythms that affect plants. Can't move. We can move around. So they affect us too, but they affect plants more. Okay?
So I think your question, and something in herbal medicine that we see a lot too, is like chamomile is like, oh, it's a digestive, it's good for digestion.
Right.
I mean, yeah, but that's a reductionist type of thinking in that we want it to fit in a box, and we want to say turmeric is a great anti-inflammatory, and it's the curcumin, that's what does it. And so then we, as a human society, then want like 1 billion milligrams of curcumin. We want to isolate the curcumin and get more curcumin because that's the thing. And then 10 years down the road, we're like, ooh, it didn't really work that well that way, and there's all these side effects, weird, and we just do it over and over again. And yes, we can test for curcumin and we can test for these active ingredients that are in a plant, and we think that that's what's doing it, but there are thousands upon thousands of different relationships and actions and chemicals and systems in that whole plant medicine that we will probably never fully understand with our linear mind or be able to see or identify in a microscope. And it is an anti-inflammatory, but why? And it's not just because of the one thing, it's because of the symphony of things that are in that. And so the preparations in biodynamics, which I think for a lot of herbal growers, biodynamics feels like a really natural step, because biodynamics uses all these herbs for the land, and they have these correlations between how yarrow and nettle is used, and it's really the same kind of ways that we're healing the land with those herbs that we heal our bodies with those herbs. They really lay really nicely together. But it's improving digestion of the land, but it's doing so many other things. And just, I think with herbs, instead of the treatment mindset, it's just which herbs grow well in your environment and which ones are you called to consume. Now consume them, and on a regular basis, and because you love them and because they're great for you, and they offer a million things like on a daily basis. I probably consume 12 herbs a day, not to treat anything. I'm not sick at all, but they feed me in more than just a nutrition chemical way. There's other things going on there. And so I invite you to explore that, but make them a part of your life. You get to see them, you get to smell them, you taste them, you ingest them, and it's not one thing. Chamomile is not just a digestive aid. It is a million other things and intelligences in there that we'll probably never be able to put on a chart, but you can feel it.
So when you get to a decision, when you get to something in your work, whatever it is, you ask yourself, am I in the dynamic? Am I working in the realm of the living? And if you're not, you'll know it. And your heart will tell you. Ask the question here, not here. Am I in the dynamic? Am I really getting all I can get from this process and from this relationship, right? It's not about taking, but am I really in the mix and in the dynamic, or am I not? And I ask myself that all the time. Is this move that I'm either being told or I think I need to do, am I in the realm of the living? Am I encouraging the life to be all it can be? And you'll know. Do I use this alcohol to extract, or do I find a water extraction, or do I find a whole nother way to take my medicine, or to make my herbal whatever, right? I mean, there are horrible ways to extract plant matter and essences. To me, butane, I mean, they're using weird stuff. And it really works, but then they say, oh, it all comes out, we'll take it out, it won't be, and it's like, forget about it. The energetics of that, you've destroyed the connection and the relationship. We just found a solventless process to get the most rosin out of our hemp. And because people are recommending everything from butane or propane or gasoline or God knows what else. And also, what's the alcohol called? Starts with an E?
Ethanol.
Huh? Ethanol. And it's like, I don't want that. I don't want it. That's not all going to come back out. I don't believe, forget it. I don't like. And then, have you ever been to one of these cannabis labs where they got the bubbles and the boil, and then they freeze it and they separate all this different cannabinoids, and it's like this team from LA came to see us, and they said, you're going biodynamic, we want it all, and we're going to make these high-end products with it. And I went to Grand Junction, I saw their laboratory, and I walked in there, and they took me through the process, and I said, cannabinoids are entities, and you're beating the shit out of them, and I don't want my plant matter and you've spent all this time on this relationship with the whole farm organism and all the life in it, and this is one of the beautiful beings that have come out of it, and you want me to put it, no, you can't buy my hemp. And they were like, what? I said, yeah, I won't do that to my friend, And so we found this young couple in town that have, they have going on in the laboratory, and they're doing all this stuff. I was with them yesterday, and we did a bunch of, wizardy type things. We had a good time. But they have figured out they're just using pressure, and they're just squeezing it out, and it's turning into something because the flower will degrade at some point, and you can't use it anymore of any herb. And so this is turning it into a rosin. It just basically is pressure. And it turns into that, and then we can mix it into and use it to make other things. And so it's the solventless, full spectrum hemp rosin tincture is what we've come up with. So anyway, you're confronted all the time with different processes and different decisions. And I guess being squashed is maybe better than being boiled and frozen and maybe, I don't know. And injected with alcohol and sucked back out. I don't know. So it's a call, I guess.
I would say it's what your cows are doing to the grass,
Yeah.
right?
The ferment, the rumination, the
Crushing
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Extracting.
Well, I'm looking more and more into alchemical text, and I'm finding that, nature is constantly with the sun and the life doing alchemical transmutations or transformations, right? But we go, because we use all this brute force, and we begin to interrupt the healing efficacy. Anyway, because it turns into the chemical that we think is, like she said, that's what we're going to isolate. And that's like whatever, whole. Yeah. The shit I tell you what, the CBD that's at the checkout counter by the National Enquirer and the gum is crap. That isn't medicine. That's industrial extracted, horribly treated, poisoned stuff. It's not medicine. It's not therapy. And the public doesn't know that. They don't know or care or whatever. I don't know. Anyway. Sorry for the rant.
I have a question about, do you have licensing that you need to do? Do you do GAP stuff, like Good Agricultural Practices certification or anything? Or is it just kind of like you're able to do this, sell it, around that kind of logistical stuff?
So if we, as we scale, we'll bump up to that a little bit more. And also if we need to sell to larger product lines, that's where some of those things are going to start to come into play. I very much stay in the world of raw agricultural good. That is what I call everything. I do not blend anything. I stay away from anything that would consider it anything more, even dried is still a raw agricultural good. And because I sell to apothecaries for the most part, they are under way less, because they then are selling a raw agricultural good to their consumers. And we've all been able to kind of skirt and stay away from that space. The GAP standards are for a larger farm with a larger income, and if you're going to a larger product line, you would definitely have to start looking into that. And that becomes a decision at some point. They require that all your harvesting equipment is plastic bins that you can sterilize. I would like to not do that. I like to harvest in beautiful wicker baskets that probably are very much not sterile. And that is one reason why I wanted to get away from the product line too. I don't belong in an FDA compliant clean room. I'm not that clean. My nails will never be that clean to fit into that space. So I would prefer to stay just under that scale where those kind of larger regulations are coming down upon me. That doesn't mean that we, depending on the drive and desire and that some of those things aren't practiced, And I do so what's really required at my scale is lot tracking. So my buyers need to know that I know what I'm giving them, that this Echinacea angustifolia is Echinacea angustifolia. So
From here at this time.
seed came from here,
Yeah.
grown here. This is the plant properly ID'd. So any seed that comes in, and now we mostly collect our own seed with just a little bit coming in every season. Where did the seed come from? That gets a lot number right away, and that lot number follows the plant all the way through, so that when the buyer buys it, that if anything ever down the road was questioned, I can produce those records of where that came from. So that's the most important thing to buyers at this point, and especially product lines, is they need to be able to be confident that you know exactly what you're giving them and what you're selling them, and that there's records of that.
I think you have to understand the thresholds of the officialdom and then figure out how to stay under without, we can produce so many eggs without calling up the USDA to have, we can produce the raw milk, luckily in Colorado, and not sell it. We can have cow shares. So that's an end run. You have to sign a couple inches of bullshit paperwork to get real food. But so it's like that with all of it. These things, I mean, we're trying to sell them on the internet, and then we're getting into, Steph is helping us navigate, like, well, if you say this or do this, then you have to understand that.
And how much you
But
want
it's
to
an
play in it.
interesting thing because the official rules and regs, which they say are for the public's health and safety, are really about how to extract more money out of you and the system. But they actually are encouraging small scale and a distributed network, and they're discouraging the old growth model. So in a funny way, I used to fight it. Now I think, like, you know what? Yeah, have your regs. I know how to work within them or under them, under those thresholds. And actually what we need to be doing is much more systemically as a distributed hub of production and processing and distribution anyway. And so it's backfiring for them in a certain way because they want to encourage the growth model. I'm talking about economics, right? And so really this is encouraging small scale. Look at, here we are, sharing. Uh-oh, how can I make money off of this sharing? How can they tax this, right? And all this stuff. So it's an interesting systemic thing. Anyway, it's
And understanding the regulations are super important so that you can
Yeah.
dance around them how you want. Like a clinical herbalist, if I am seeing you as a client, I can make you all the tinctures, salves, or whatever I want, and I don't have to FDA anything. Nothing has to be FDA tested. I don't have to follow any of the, because you are my direct client, and I can make you whatever I want. As soon as we take that relationship away and we put a store in between us, that becomes something else, and that's when the regulations start to be more active. Same thing with the ID standards. If you have a product line, you would tend to be liable to send your herbs out for third-party genetic testing. But if you come to my farm and you do botanical ID checklist to make sure that this plant is what it is, and you note that down, you can take that herb and you don't have to do any of that genetic testing. It gets harder to be bigger and to do those things and to sell wider and make more money. But finding that sweet spot of where you're making enough for the life that you want to live,
That's right.
and not needing more and bigger, then you can stay within the choices and the ethical realm that's right for you. But it is a little wavy sometimes.
Scale affects relationships. Right? you have 400 here, be a very different situation. So it's the
Any other questions?
how's time?
I did. When you were talking about burdock,
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a little bit of an argument with my husband over burdock because we have a lot. I have big burdock and then I have, I'm guessing, the wild burdock. Do you have an opinion on which is better medicinally? Or what's in demand?
So the wild burdock gets big too, and it's first year, second year.
That's what it is.
The smaller leaves.
Okay.
I think I've heard it called maybe the basic burdock or the
Okay.
minimus something. And then I've got, I think it was called Japanese burdock.
Like the gobo,
Which is
the
huge
big
leaves.
with the bigger, yeah.
You sure it just isn't first and second year growth?
No,
No, yes, there is a little.
Okay.
So no, I would use them interchangeably for personal use. When you get into commercial selling, it becomes like whatever the most studies were on, or whatever the like varietal that has the most documented historical use is the only one that's commercially viable. So they're like our marshmallow, the big cultivar that has the big roots and grows tall, is medicinally interchangeable with the Malva neglecta, the wild mallow that grows all over the ground. But there's no commercial sales application for the wild small one. But for personal use, I mostly use that one because that's everywhere anyway. And yeah, exactly. And so I would use either one. The gobo is what I think is the bigger one that you have probably, which is more of the edible variety because it's been bred for a bigger root.
Right.
You probably still, unless you cultivated it in hills, you're not going to get much root anyway because that sucker's down there. You don't want to spend 4 hours digging one root. But I tend towards the wild varietals. I think they have higher medicinal qualities than some of the ones that were bred for big roots because they're more economical. But I would use either one, whichever one you have.
The wilds also evolved with the environment.
Right.
And so when we cultivate and we do heirlooms, this comes from Enzo Nastati, but he's like, we need the new food, we need the new medicine, and when we use an heirloom, which I used to be Mr. Heirloom, right? Oh, grandma's, cattle bean from Iowa, and but what we're doing is we're eating 1835 because we've locked that food in its genetics, right? It hasn't really evolved. And so what we need to do is eat and have medicines made out of things that are now, because the world's different than it was in 1800 years ago or whatever, right? That makes sense? And so how do we do that? That's a whole nother level of farming research and everything else. I wanted to tell you, are we okay time? Where we at?
7 minutes.
Okay. This is just another perspective on another way to make medicine, but so I'm having a Corona moment, and it's amazing we haven't even brought it up once so far, but I'm going to wreck that. But my God, the media, what are they going to talk about when this is over? Or so. This idea of a pandemic, or this idea of a virus, or this idea of whatever, to me they're ideas. Are they real or not? Whatever, let's not go there. But so there's this perception of a virus that is going to bother us or wake us up or whatever you want to say. And so how do we help people with that? And so some of us got together, Karen and Alicia, and I forget who, May, and anyway, and some of my crew.
I distilled it with May.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay, and so we had made the hemp essence, in the same way over at Karen's house. And so we thought, well, maybe there's a corona thing. And so we researched Booner, you know Booner's work, Herod, I think is the first name.
Stephen, I have two
Stephen,
of his books.
Stephen, yeah.
I'll pass
So
them
he's
around.
got an
got a lot of
antiviral
books.
and he's got an antibacterial. They're great. And so we looked at his stuff, and we found the plants that were being suggested to work with actually corona. It's in the coronavirus, or a strain of that kind of thing. And so we got together to try to, in this way, make a therapy that would help people, and whether it's whatever.
I think something that's important to remember, because I know we're like the book is antiviral, herbal antivirals.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
These herbs don't kill virus. That's not the way that herbal medicine really even works. It doesn't really kill most things. What it does is help support your body's own innate healing systems. So it's not, this is a virus. This virus is trying to kill me. I'm going to come give this and kill it instead.
Well, that's the vaccine mentality.
And that's
is
even
to kill.
Right. And I think
Yeah.
there's even a misunderstanding in herbal medicine that that's what we're doing when we say antiviral, because the term kind of means that. But what is happening is it's just offering these different herbs that help to reinforce our body's own innate healing and understanding. So it has everything it needs to make the decisions it needs, whether it's a virus or it's something else. We've supported our body's intelligence and systems by adding these plants into the conversation and adding those chemicals and those different constituents that the plants offer, so that our bodies can better do what they need to do to keep us healthy and to survive. So
Anyway, so we got together to do this, and we've each of us had made or brought with us to the group different extractions or hydrosols of these plants, or the plant matter or whatever, and we got together to make it, and we're kind of going, antiviral, well, we don't want to kill. What we want to do is harmonize, right? We want to, can we work together to co-create something that would bring together those plant entities or essences or whatever you want to call it, that would harmonize with this idea of the virus, or the corona thing. And so we did this work, and we co-created this, we call it a viral immune harmonizer. So it's like she's saying, it's not about going to poison or kill or be aggressive about something. It's about creating a community or a space or a healing relationship instead. Right? Does that make sense? So it's not that far off from what you're talking about, but we kind of all looked at each other and go, wait, we want this to be, am I right? I mean, we want this to be a harmonizer. Right? Kind of? You don't, she's not. Anyway, at least that's what I thought about. So anyway, so we came up with this. The interesting thing about this is your testimonials are either you died from the thing or you didn't. And so, or whatever, or it helped you maybe. You don't know. How do you know? I don't know. Whereas the hemp thing, we're getting testimonials back about essential tremors and Parkinson's life quality improvements and, dementia not return to dementia, but from dementia. But, so we're actually getting people writing back saying, oh, this is, I need more. It's really, if I'm having a positive life quality effect, But this one is kind of like you either got it or you didn't. I don't know. I don't know how to get data on this.
I think one of the valuable things is even in the name, language is important, and to call it a viral harmonizer, it kind of removes this war, fear mentality that we are not like this these things aren't out to like kill us and get us. And you see this a lot in the invasive plant movement, which I usually, when I talk about a plant, I'll say, oh, this is on the naughty plant list or something like that. And we worked with the town of Carbondale to rewrite their weed management strategies and their weed management plan. And we, much to many people's disagreement, we stopped using the word invasive and started just using different words around what we're calling these places and just removing this like, it's this invader and it's gonna kill and we must, this just like aggressive, angry language. I don't know of a single plant on the planet that actually degrades the earth as an ecosystem. Like no plant is like, I'm destroying the earth and I'm gonna make it uninhabitable. It might be in a place that we don't want for various reasons that are complicated and diverse, but the plant itself is not destroying the planet Earth. So like, let's calm down a little bit. The virus or whatever it is this, they're all, the pest, the weed, they're all messages to us. And to just step back and take the fear and the war language out of it, take a nice deep breath, understand that there's love and intention and beauty in the universe. Just changing even our language and the way that like a harmonizer is just a different feeling altogether than some other verbiage that's floating around.
Let me ask, show of hands now. How many people have had a positive outcome from this last 90, 100 days? More time to yourself, more la la. Do we want to name them? There's been a lot of positive from it. Huh?
Bigger gardens, for
yeah,
sure.
I mean, make the list.
Seed companies selling out of seed.
Whatever this thing is or what we perceive it is has been a blessing. It's waking us up. Things are getting back to normal, and I'm not real excited about it. We're just falling back into pattern. What have we learned? Are we going to really learn from it?
We'll see.
We'll see.
Any other questions before lunch? You guys are welcome to schedule to come out to the ranch if you want to see what we're up to out there. Taste some lovely things.
Good time to come next couple months. Things are just starting to really look good.
How do you accept visitors? Like, do you call first?
It'd be good to let us know. Yeah, I mean, there's certain days that we hardly are. We have low staff, and then there's other days with more people around, and it's easier to have visitors. We've been wide open, and we actually Corona taught us that we're not going to open back up 24/7, and we like that. We now know let's be open 2 or 3 days a week, not 6. And we're about access, we're about education, but we also have work to do. Yeah, so it'd be good to ring. Yeah, it's sustainablesettings.org on the internet. I'll give you a phone number if you want. You could email Rose's booking stuff, so it's rose@sustainablesettings.org if you want to email and come by. Put a group together, come in. And I don't know when you're there or not too, but you need to see this 2 or 3 acres that are, all of this group would be very interested to see the way, because there's some full-on field cultivation of, say, oats, and then there's little groovy, little curvy paths and things like that too. So it's both of those things.
And you're welcome anytime you're at the ranch. You can totally wander through the space for sure. But if you are specifically wanting like my time and a tour of that space, then just either go through Rose and she can contact me, or you can contact me directly. And give you a number, or it's Stephanie at biodynamicbotanicals.com. I'm going to give you my number really quick because our reception is horrible. And I check email like once a week. So if you need a rapid response, texting is the best way to get me. As Pat knows, like call, like can't take a call, and I don't want a signal booster, so everybody just has to roll with that. My number is 970-309-9296. Just text me, and I'm there at least 5 days a week, all the time.
Yeah, and you want her to tour you around. With your interest in herbs, you want her to do it. But if you put together a group for a tour, we could do it, you know, through the dairy, through the crops, and through the wildlands and the pasture movement. And we have some other structures there that I don't know if you would get into that, geometries and things that we're playing with. And I mean, biodynamic, whoopee, we got it all. We got all that stuff. So you have to come with time, though, for that. It's not a half-hour deal.
I have a question back to the beginning real quick in regards to tilling. And you were saying there's times when it can be detrimental. When would it be necessarily beneficial or harmful, tilling?
So you have to consider soil moisture levels. You have to consider how much you're going to do it and when you're going to do it, how hot it is, how cool it is. So all those things go into play. And I certainly learned my lesson really well with under-tilling. Because again, coming from permaculture and sheet mulching, like no till and no machines, and that as you start to scale, those concepts start to break down. And so even when I was like, okay, I'll till, but only a little, and then I put in a nettle bed that needs to be in that space for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, if the grasses, and this is pasture, if the grasses weren't adequately removed from that space, they're right back in there so quickly. And the nettle will still grow. The nettle is going to grow. Those herbs in that field will be there with the grasses without me probably forever. But for me to have a balance of being able to actually get an appreciable quantity of herbs that I'm not picking grass out of for 7 days is that balance. And because I'm working with perennials, I'm not going to get a tiller back in there the next year. We're talking the comfrey field 20 years before I'll ever need to even think about removing that crop, if even then. So balancing out, like, how long am I going to have this patch be what it is? And one till really just brings up other things and doesn't do much of anything for the grasses.
Stimulates.
It stimulates life and growth. And then so quickly we get back into a space where those the crop I'm intending to be there is out of good production at that point, mints and things like that as well. So there's a whole mastery behind it, and thinking about how long that crop's going to be there. But if you're too wet, it doesn't work and destroys and clogs up the machine. And if it's too dry, it just breaks up the life. And if you go too deep or too shallow, there's a masterful science. And I'm not the expert tiller. We have some guys that work machines at the ranch who know far better than I about how to utilize those machines, and I rely upon that relationship and different understanding for them to help me navigate those choices so that we make the best decision for the soil and the life in it for the long term of the specific crop going into that place.
That's kind of bigger scales.
Yeah.
I don't know how big are you talking some beds?
Yeah, just like even if you're starting on a fresh
You're the tiller.
Yeah, at a small scale, machines just aren't necessary. They're too
Yeah.
rough.
You're the
You
tiller.
just flip the soil, break it up, hand pull. You can manage a small sheet mulching works so good on a small scale. There's so many things to do with a backyard that you'll never need a machine for. But once you're going into like an acre, you like try to hand pull all of that.
Right.
And experiment,
Yeah.
Say hi to the plant that's out of place and ask it to move along and thank it for its work and see if it works.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks guys.
Yeah, good.
That was awesome.
Here, I'll pass it around. You guys can spray this. It's a hydrosol of Rocky Mountain fir that I got from the Black Canyon rim of the Gunnison.
What's that?
Wow. I didn't get to smell the peppermint.
Oh yeah, spearmint.
Tulsi.